The Dane and Derek Show is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. Content warnings can be found in the episode description. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dane and Derek. My name is Derek. I'm one of your two co-hosts on this podcast in our very, very tiny corner of the internet. You know that I make movies and play a lot of tabletop games, and I've also had a handful of jobs. And today with me is my good friend Dane.
Hey, I am a person in this capitalist society. I am a cog in the machine that have worked many a job. I also write and play tabletop games and love nerd stuff. Yeah, and I'm about to go to school to get a very specific job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Go law school.
yeah, Godspeed with all that reading.
Thank you. Gonna need it.
So today's topic is jobs we've had. This one was one of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments before we just dive into talking about jobs we've had?
Okay, big broad idea here. Jobs are fun. They can be awful. They are often entirely necessary. I kind of wish they weren't. If you are a person who loves your job and finds it your calling, that's awesome. I am definitely a person of the philosophy that the way we ask people to work is, on the whole, a little immoral, and certainly don't believe that people's identity or value is heavily linked up with the way that they earn the money that our society requires them to do to eat and live. So just signposting all that. Also, jobs are hilarious often in retrospect, especially those early ones you have in your teens and 20s. So we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of odd jobs. Like, I think the first thing I ever got paid for was lawn mowing. I lawn mowed a friend's house.
Classic suburban start.
Yeah, I did it twice, and I got paid $150.
Damn.
Which was incredible. I was so rich that summer. I saw a lot of movies that summer. And then probably the I don't know, like, my work history is pretty, it's not like limited, but I've been very lucky. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very lucky in that almost every job I've had has been related to something I've enjoyed doing. Like my first job was I was a martial arts instructor for 6 months at the dojo that I spent majority of my time at in high school.
I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, I would basically open up the dojo, teach the children's and juniors class, and then train. And then at the end of training, I would clean up the dojo and lock up for the night. I did that for about 6 months, and then I went back to being a volunteer because I just couldn't work. I just couldn't work a lot of hours. So it just made more sense for me to be a volunteer again.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got very lucky in that my dad was doing like a business presentation, and he asked me to help him film a video. And then I cut the video together, and then someone in the marketing department saw it and asked my dad to edit videos. And my dad was like, I don't edit videos. That was my son. And then that guy, his name's Mike Barrowman, shout out to Mike, he asked to interview me and hired me as an intern to make marketing videos.
God, I remember that.
Yeah, so
we made like a short.
Yes, we made a short film that I think is still on the internet called Threat Force.
Yes. Oh my God, flashbacks. Flashbacks.
Yeah, it was because I worked for a company called WebRoot, which is an antivirus software company. But at the time, it was cloud-based antivirus software, which was pretty unheard of at the time. Now it's pretty common.
Yeah.
But basically, like, we made I basically made a lot of like corporate training videos. I filmed a lot of like all hands meetings. I archived a lot of stuff, and I helped come up with marketing materials. And then on the side, I was like, I kind of want to just make a movie to kind of like just be like, oh, this could be a fun way to market the software. Because at the time we were trying to do a real big push to market to gamers. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, oh, let's do something that's like
Very
VGHS.
VGHS. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, like I don't really like shooter games, but I like VGHS. And oh, what if the antivirus software is like, it's like a Halo drop squad, and they like show up to like defeat the viruses on your computer. And so we made a very silly movie.
Yeah. I remember,
That
didn't Nathan throw me into the cement?
Yes, Nathan threw you into
Yeah.
saying, yeah, we got a permit from the town of Superior to
Mm-hmm.
film in an underpass.
Yep.
Um, and we had a bunch of just like airsoft guns
Yep.
and
That was
like
one of the
prop
ones where
weapons.
it was one of the ones where we like called out to the cops first and like every
Yeah.
hour about to be like, hey, we're still filming. We're here. This is what we're doing. Here's our
hmm
permit. I remember that.
Exactly. Yeah. We had signs on set.
Yep.
We had like, I think my brother was there just holding a sign up.
Yeah, we had a
Uh,
couple of people whose whole job was to be um,
to stop bikers and
yeah,
joggers and like let them know.
like we're filming. We're also like all these weapons are fake. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
that. Also, everybody had to put all the weapons down when we weren't actively filming. Was the other
Yes, we
thing.
were very. That was one
Yeah,
thing I
that
will say.
was.
We were incredibly safe with how we made this, because we never at any point. I don't think we ever shot at a single shot where it was like there were no like weapons pointed at camera, no
Mm-mm.
like direct one-on-one confrontation. A lot of stuff was like
Most of like the
edited after the
yeah,
fact.
most of like the takedowns were uh in melee or like cutaways where like we'd have like an angled shot of someone firing a gun and then a cut to the person being like hit
Yeah,
and like they'd be like taking shots and then fall down, right? Like
exactly. Yeah, we were very crafty about it, just because like I don't really like guns. I've never really liked
mm-mm.
guns, and guns on set have always made me super paranoid, for good reason.
Yeah.
Um, we unfortunately still have accidents in the industry,
Yep.
with guns today, and it's really unfortunate that safety isn't prioritized. It's a whole
Mm-hmm.
nother conversation, stunt safety. But yeah,
Yeah.
but like for a bunch of like 16-year-olds, we were incredibly safe about it. And yeah, we made a really cool, fun little short film that, um,
You got paid
on,
for.
yeah, it was honestly like one of the coolest things. It's one of those weird films that I'm like, this was such a dumb movie, but it was so good. It was like, I learned a lot on that movie because I did a lot
Mm.
of the VFX. I shot a lot of it. I edited it. I think I paid $20 for a song for it. Um,
Yeah, I also think you funneled a lot of those funds right back into Bros of the Realm,
oh yeah,
right?
oh
Like
yeah, pretty much. This job paid for Bros of the Realm.
like the half
And
that
like
wasn't
initially,
crowdfunded. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
because I think like we crowdfunded like, was it 3K, 2K,
Something like that.
and then I put an additional like grand and a half into it, which was
Mhm.
basically my earnings that summer.
Yeah.
Um, but
But
yeah,
yeah, that was a good job for you. No doubt.
yeah. So that was like, yeah, so that was like my first job, and then everything else from there was kind of in the film world. Like, did a lot of rental house work up until I moved to LA. And then I continued to do a lot of rental house work. I think within this past year is the first time I've had a different job outside of a rental house. Um, Besides like the occasional freelance or odd gig I've done for
Mhm.
people, because I fix a lot of things. I occasionally like sand things or like chop wood. I don't know. Like I can do a lot of handyman things. I I also do sound recording for people sometimes. That's like a thing I do.
Mhm.
Um, and like, I mean, a handful of times I've just been paid to like, watch a truck or whatever, classic LA PA stuff.
Yep.
But that's like, I've been very lucky in that regard, that most of the work I've had the pleasure of doing has been in my field and has been something that I've really enjoyed. And, that I've had mostly positive experiences with. I have had some really awful jobs, like anyone.
Mhm.
Um, I've had jobs where I feel unsafe, or I don't feel heard, or I don't feel like I can advocate for myself, or I've had to deal with a lot of shitty people. but not to the extent of like someone working in the service industry. So,
Hmm.
like I always try to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So going off of that, I think the very first time I worked for somebody was I would do I would work the flower stand at the Louisville um, farmers market for my mom's flower business.
I didn't know
Um,
your mom had a flower business.
yeah, she did. She kind of closed shop right at the beginning of high school. Um,
Mm,
so it was a little bit before you and I met. She only did it
right.
for a few years, and it was mostly weddings. It was fun, and I still know way more about flower arranging than um one would think from meeting me
That
right off the
explains
bat.
so much about you.
Yeah. But
Okay.
anyways, so that was like the first time I did like something that looked like a job and then got paid for it.
Hmm.
But like no W-2 or anything. I didn't actually get like a quote unquote job because I don't want to go so far as to call them scams or grifts, but like that's kind of what I did in high school where it was like basically I drove people around for gas money and that's what I
Yeah.
did. Like I
You
would I
were.
would like I would I basically would I Ubered before Uber was like a thing.
Yeah.
It was kind
Yeah.
of but only
Yeah.
for like my friends and family.
Yeah. There was
Like
definitely a regular, steady, just peddling of $20 bills your way.
yeah, yeah. So I didn't like need a job in high school because I just kind of did that. Like it got to the point where there's one time where Will Bangs' dad needed a ride and I drove him somewhere. Um
Wow.
yeah. So yeah, so basically like I think probably if I had if like I could have been like a Lyft or Uber driver in high school, I might have been. Um but I don't know if that's like I don't know if they let high school drivers. Anyways, but
Probably
yeah,
not.
so like I didn't really get a job until college, and I started out working in the public radio station that was associated with the college, but was like independent. And that was a pretty good gig. It was a lot of like listening, reviewing music, and talking with labels
Hmm.
um, for money, which was like super cushy, super cool. Did that for my first year of college, and then I started getting restaurant jobs for a little while. Worked at a place called the Huckleberry down in Louisville. Loved
Classic
that
spot.
yeah, loved that job actually. Really, really, really enjoyed that. I worked like a very specific shift that was like super chill, and I worked it every day, same time, and it was loved it, loved it, loved it. Then I worked an Irish pub when I got back to Durango for my second year of college. That was the worst. But at the same time, I'd been doing uh, film scores for people. And kind of like you, I got handed a really good gig where I got paid $100 an hour for
Ooh, wow.
like about a week's worth of work. And I was like, great, quitting this horrible job at the Irish Embassy, which is the name of the pub. Um,
Ugh.
yeah, not
It's a
good.
terrible name for a pub.
Yeah, not it's bad. Anyways, so then I was just like, and I just went to my roommate who I was kind of like subletting from, and I just was like, here's my rent for like the next like 6 months, boom, and I just like didn't pay rent again until like June, like actively.
Wow.
At which point I got my first library job, doing just like putting books away. Uh, and then I became the director of music over at that radio station for a little while, and then that job got kind of closed down. It didn't wasn't awesome, didn't love it, but it wasn't like as cool as I'd really hoped it was going to be, and it was taking up a ton of time. So eventually, I went back to the library for quite a long time, and then after school I was not like in love with music in the same way, so I went and got a more like professional full-time library gig for the last few years, and it's been solid. Like I've had like kind of a what I'd describe as like just kind of a like solid but low key kind of like job situation for as long as I've been working, which has been like I've worked service jobs. I've worked kind of like I currently do like kind of customer service at the library. Like that's what working a desk is, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've managed some people when I was like the director of music. Like I've done a number of things. I've done audio editing freelance. I compose soundtracks for music. For I've composed soundtracks for movies for money. Um, which kind of like you were talking about with like that magical feeling of like, whoa, I did like the thing and then they paid me. And I was like, that was really cool.
Yeah.
No lie, that was an awesome experience, but I did kind of come away from that feeling like I don't think I want to keep doing this. Um, just because I was like, I don't think I want to keep working with directors who don't know what they're talking about, and I get it just got frustrating, so I stopped. Um, and so it's like led to this like you've mostly worked in your industry and what you wanted to, which is super cool, and I really want to know what your how your feelings about this kind of in relation to what I'm about to say. Um, but like over the years, I've more and more come to this feeling in this place of like, I don't really want my art and my job to be the same thing. I want to be very interested and driven towards like the thing I do with most of my day, which is going to be a job because that's how a capitalist society works, right? Like,
Right.
um, which is part of the reason I'm going into law. Not only am I like think I can do some good with it, but also it's like this is a challenging profession. Like
Yeah.
I want to be challenged. I want to be working hard. Like, or I'll be bored and I'm losing my mind slowly over time. But it doesn't need to be like my calling. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been slowly
Yeah.
developing like a much more an older version, like a historically like the idea of your job being your passion is like sort of a thing that's come about in like the last 50-ish years. Like
Right.
that's what it's been.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like kind of like doing like a throwback to like an earlier conception of like what a job is. Um, and that's like become like a really like grounding point in my life. Like I'm like, oh, this feels so much better. Like I can do my art without worry. I have this like professionals aspect. Like it feels much more balanced. Um, and I don't need to worry about like my writing life ever becoming uh something that I don't want to do because it's work, you know.
Right. The pressure's off in a way.
Yeah, yeah. Even if
Yeah.
I hopefully one day have a published work like, like bound and in a bookstore. Um, like that can make money or not and it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
um that's where I'm at. And so it's been it's been very interesting. So for you who's had the good fortune to basically work in your industry and what you want to do, how do you feel about that? Um,
Yeah. So I think from a very early age, my mother was always encouraging about whatever you do, work a job that is related to what you're interested in. So
mhm,
you'll be interested in finding ways to grow.
mhm,
She was very against me working for a very long time until I got that internship. Um, and in college, yeah, I worked at the college rental house, which is basically customer service and IT combined, but for cameras and sound equipment.
yeah,
And when I moved to LA, that's how I cut my teeth, cut my bread, got bread on the table for the
yep,
first 3 4 months. I was basically like a freelance runner for various rental houses. I guess just really just one in Los Angeles, in Glendale, called CSLA Camera Rentals. They were really great. They treated me really well. And I think the thing that I had to reconcile when I moved to LA was that, there's this idea, right? Like you move to LA, you just start freelancing, making music videos, making short films, cutting your teeth, and eventually you make a film that pops off, and somehow you do this by the skin of your wallet, right?
yeah,
When I moved to LA, I had no money. I
uh-huh,
spent it all on my security deposit and my rent, which was subsidized by not my parents, but my roommate's parents. Like like they were subsidizing like her rent and my other roommate's rent, and so I got really cheap rent as a result. And
Mm.
so I was like, okay, like I have $1,200 that covers my portion of the security deposit and my first month's rent, and that's it. And
Yeah.
I quickly realized that I needed to reconcile the idea of, do I want to be directing for money full time, and if so, can I even do that? And I looked at my work and I realized that I have nothing in my reel that can get me work. That was one of the first pieces of advice I got. From my roommate's boss's boss. He had told me, like, all these films you've made are really great. It shows that you're active. It shows that you're actively trying to write and direct, but it's not going to get you a job. All of this is stuff that won't get you work. Like, what you need to be thinking about is, how can you survive like these first 18 months in LA? Because after that, maybe you'll have enough of a foundation to work and to
Hmm.
start directing again. And that's ultimately where I moved back into the realm of kind of where, like what you were talking about, well, like the idea of having a job that is separate from your art. Um, but for me, it's a little bit more narrow in the sense of, I mean, I'll say it. I work at BuzzFeed. I've been there for almost 4 years now. And what I do at BuzzFeed is very separate from what I do outside of BuzzFeed.
Hmm.
Even though they're both still creative and video and film oriented, at BuzzFeed, I'm basically a logistics person. I'm like a producer in a sense of the word. But I'm also a teacher. I'm like a teacher, producer, logistics person,
Uh-huh.
and so it's very much a different. It works the like, what is it? The right side of my brain, the analytical, the like
I can't remember
mathematical
which
side of
it
my
is.
brain. Yeah,
Yeah, but I know
it
what you
works
mean.
that side of my brain versus my like short films and my podcasts and all that kind of stuff outside of work, which is then my, works the left side of my brain.
Hmm.
Because I'm not in a creative role at BuzzFeed. I'm in a very logistics kind of role. And so even though it's the same field, I'm able to have a little bit of that separation.
Yeah.
Um, because I think that the mentality that you have, I think that that is honestly a really great way to support yourself as an artist. I think, like, a friend of mine once phrased it to me. He was like, "Do you think you'll ever become a full-time podcaster?" And I was like, "I don't know, because then I'd be worried about not being a full-time filmmaker." And he was like, "But you'll always make movies, so you'll always be a filmmaker. So what's the big worry about becoming a full-time podcaster?" And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're totally right. I'll still be able to be that thing if so long as I still practice, right?"
Yeah.
And so, like, being able to practice art in the time that I have at the end of the week is still in there. It still exists, and I'm very lucky in that. Like, I now have a lot of friends that are kind of like how it was in high school, or are in the same kind of spaces of, do having, like, I guess, high school and college, like in the sense of like, do having like a day thing to support yourself, and then needing to express themselves through art outside of work.
Yeah.
um I think the tricky part with working in the same field is, of course, like, you're plugged into it at all times. Like, I'm always
Hmm.
plugged into industry news at
Yeah.
all times. I don't really get a break from it. um and I guess to counteract that, it's why, like, I've started moving back into like Tuesday night project stuff, which is like performing arts.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
very like activism based, and it's very grassroots, it's very DIY, it's live performance, it's very unplugged from everything else that I'm in. And something that I've been like working towards these last few years is going back and finding like another thing to be interested in outside of like the industry entirely. And for me, that's going to be like martial arts. And so it's like finding things that are not just creating, are becoming the sort of balancing act, right? Because I
Yeah.
have a job where I do create in some way, and then outside of that job I create a lot of things. So now everything else I do can't be that. Um, and I think it's very much why, like, it's very much why, like, I do this podcast with you, because it's creating in a way that doesn't feel like film and doesn't feel like
Hmm.
my day job.
Yeah.
Um, it's why I do the actual play show, for the exact same reason. Um, and it's why it's why I think it's also important that like I think the other problem with like the film industry is that because it's all like like freelance grind based,
Mm,
very rarely do people get days off,
yeah.
and people can hurt themselves physically and mentally just because of that. And I think that I wish the industry supported time off and time away from the itself. I wish there
Hmm.
was a better way to do that outside of the unions and stuff like that. And I feel like I've gotten away from the question. The question was how to balance being working in a creative field while also being creative, right?
It was no. I think you've actually answered it pretty well. It was just I was more asking like, what's the experience like, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's
because
definitely exhausting.
yeah, because your job is part of it is still a filmmaking media generation thing, which is also
Yes.
your like passion side, right? Your
Yeah.
something I've been doing is like I've started dividing up like I like outside of like my social life, which is feels completely separate from these sorts of things, due to the fact not because I'm not like doing like this with you is like a social thing, but like um but it's about the people. It's not about making something. Like the law
Yeah.
and going to school and eventually having a job in the law field, which is the goal, right?
Right.
That is always going to be a professional thing. That is my like that's my professional life. You know, I want to hold up like my values while I'm doing it. I want to be like fairly compensated for it, you know. I want to improve in it. But that's what that is. And then
Yeah.
writing is like an endeavor for me. Like that's the word I've been using for it is like this is a thing where I make something at the end with a goal attached. And then everything else is a hobby. Is like something that's been like really important to me.
Hmm.
And having these like really firm dividing lines between them um keeps my energy up in all of them basically.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and so
Exactly.
I feel like it would be a little harder and like you were talking about with like that like you're constantly plugged in to the industry. When your endeavor and your work, while not the exact same, are so related even
Oh
though
yeah.
and so like it requires a lot more conscious like thought, right? Like
Yes. No,
um
yeah, 100%. Like, for instance, like, I have to be very intentional with the kinds of movies I want to make because I could try and make a bunch of like YouTube movies, but they
mhm
might end
mhm
up just being like BuzzFeed videos. And at that point, I would start cannibalizing the energy I have. Um,
yeah.
so it's very delicate in that regard. Like, it's very delicate, and I've had to learn to be more okay with when I'm tired of thinking about video and film, of just not pushing myself,
Mhm
um,
mhm
which is a new thing for me to just be like, yeah, like I've been reading like people's scripts at work all day, because they need to know how to like do this one art department thing, and I need to come up with a way to solve for it.
yep
I don't have the energy to go home and write my screenplay, and that's okay. Like, I need to be okay with that.
yeah.
I'll find another day when I haven't had to do that at work. When my problems at work are more, can we make a spinning helicopter camera rig or something? Um,
Right.
like,
And you know, this gets to my feelings of like this is where my like sort of my frustration comes in of like you know, of sometimes like I feel like our jobs end up taking always take the priority, you know.
yeah,
Um and it's cuz you know, like our society kind of has us over a barrel, right? Like got to eat,
yep,
got to rest and you know, like you need the money, so like that's going to end up kind of coming first and that can be
yeah,
really frustrating and it's why it's so important to hold those boundaries and all that stuff.
yeah. And then, the flip side, right? Like, if you make your passion your job,
Mhm.
then you're always working, and then you're always over the barrel, even when you don't need to be.
Right.
And then it leads to the same kind of exhaustion and frustration.
Right.
Um,
Which
it's
like
funny how like both of those kind of do that.
yeah, and like the thing that I often think about is like, you know, for people who do have their passion be their job, I often find that the people who do it so successfully have a lot of stuff going on outside of it. Like
Hmm.
there are people who very much can kind of leave. They're like, yeah, my job is my passion and those two are the same. But that means that I do my job when I'm doing my passion, I'm doing my job. And there's a
Yeah.
line and I leave that at the door, you know.
Yeah.
And I can't even though it is my passion, I can't always be doing it, or I you know. Um
Right. You'll die.
yeah, and so like I yeah, it's
I,
such a complicated thing.
there was a
Um
there was an interview with Taika Waititi,
mhm.
and he said this about film. He said the thing about film is that the stress will kill you. He was like, you
Yeah.
have to like you can't just always do film because the stress will kill you. And I very much think that applies to so many other careers. Um,
Yeah.
in that like you have to like I know that whenever I get to to the space where I'm able to write and direct full time, I know that I'm only going to allow myself 40 hours a week to do that max, if that, right? Everything
Right.
else, like it can no longer be outside of that 5 days a week. It has to be within those boundaries because if I don't, you know,
And it's
I
tough
will,
because you've spent so long doing your passion in the cracks between work
yeah,
and the rest of life, right? You know,
uh
and
huh,
so learning to stop and let that be the time in which you're doing it is probably super challenging.
oh yeah,
You know,
it's
and
challenging
yeah.
and it's and like like because of the capitalist society we live in, when you try and do stuff like that, you feel bad, you feel like you're not hustling enough.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, right, it's like what's more important, like hustling so much that by the time you succeed you're like broken, or not hustling so hard so when you do get there, maybe a little bit later than some, you're able to enjoy it because you're feeling healthy, like
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think about that a lot. Like I think there was a moment where I realized like if I don't take care of myself, I will not live to see my success. I will not live to enjoy like free time.
Mhm.
And that's when I started monitoring what I was like eating and started working out again and started getting sleep, getting that 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and I
which
mean, uh,
in our society, sleep is not encouraged.
no, it is not. And honestly, I often think about when I find myself like feeling like I've run out of things to write, like those days where you're like, I don't have an original idea in my head and everything is trash. Like those days come, right? I often
Hmm.
find that those days start coming more frequently when I have not been doing enough of anything else.
Yes, yes,
Like
yes.
I'm like, oh man, I probably need to go hiking a bit. Like
Yeah,
I need to,
yeah. You
I
probably
need
need
to,
to live a little.
yeah, I probably need to go like hang out with some friends somewhere that
Yeah.
is not the house, right? Like
Hmm.
definitely a ton of stuff like that.
No, 100%. Like, I mean, there was a period when I moved to LA where I like couldn't write. I like wrote like one thing and then I couldn't write anything else. And I realized it was because I was just working like
Hmm.
60 hours a week. I wasn't social. I wasn't allowing myself to have fun. And I think that's the other thing too, right? Like you can have fun at your day job,
Hmm.
even if it's not your passion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And like you can have
I've
like
often said that like a bad job quickly becomes a very good job if you're working with the right people and that like
yeah,
the place you're working for sucks. Like, and by bad job I mean something you don't care about. Like
right.
my two favorite jobs I've ever had, like hands down, were working for the Huckleberry and working at the Durango Public Library. And that entirely had to do with two things, which is A, the fact that both of those like institutions ran really well at the time I was working there.
Hmm.
Can't speak to how they work now. But and all the people there were rad as hell. Um,
Yeah.
and so like even though like I was tired and like was like I don't fucking want to bust tables, or like I spent most of this day shelving books, like I would walk away being like, yeah, but like I laughed with a bunch of people and I did something that made a thing work, and that's worth something. Oh, and here's a bunch of money in my pocket.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's like fun doesn't equal passion and passion doesn't equal fun, right?
yeah. Yeah,
And
I have had days of work that I've enjoyed far more than certain days of writing. Like there have
yeah.
been some days of writing where I'll walk away and be like, Grace is like, what's wrong? I'm like, I fucked up that chapter, and like walk out. Like, you know, like,
Yeah.
and you know, I didn't really. I just have to like go back and sort it out. But like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I think like we often conflate passion with fun with job in this day and age
Hmm.
because there's this huge movement of like quit your day job to go find your real passion chasing really blue oceans and stuff.
Yeah,
Um and that's not necessarily the same for everyone. Like
and
um
it's also important to like s- dissect your self worth and your sense of success away
yeah.
from working. You
Mhm.
know, like and making money, right? Like
Mhm.
being a successful like poet, for example, probably does not mean making money off being a poet. Um,
Right.
that's really like only a handful of poets in the entire world get to be that, you know.
Right.
And like some
Yeah.
people's passions may not like literally might not make them money. Like what if your passion is like traveling? Like
Yeah. No, yeah.
traveling and not being like a tour guide or like a travel guide. Like I'm talking just
No, yeah.
traveling. Like
That's how my mom is. She loves
yeah,
traveling, but traveling is so expensive.
right. And like it's like you're not gonna make how is you would how do you turn that passion into a job, right? Like
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes, and I'm on a soapbox here, so you know, bear with me, everybody. It's like our society so values this one particular thing, your work, what quote unquote monetary value you generate, that
Mhm.
it it equates everything with that as the measure of both success and the measure of being real or not. You know,
Yeah.
um, like can you like you ask someone like if someone's passion is cooking, many people's first thought is, well, they should become a chef. Is that true? Should they?
Yeah, should they? No,
Because
I
like
mean they don't have to.
no, because also being a chef kind of has some really rough edges around it. That's a
Yeah.
hard fucking job, and
Yeah.
what they love about cooking may not translate at all. Like even a little, right? Like and so we immediately jump to like make it a job, right? And I think that's often really concerning, you
Yeah, yeah,
know.
it is very concerning because I think the best jobs are the ones where you are able to harbor some distance between what you like
Mhm.
about it and what you don't like about it, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why I know that I will one day hopefully be a director. And it's because there are certain things about film that I don't like that give me distance to
Mhm.
set it down in a
Yeah.
way that when I was like in high school, I couldn't set down because I was like I'd romanticized it. But as I've gotten older, I've had to reevaluate like, do I still like this, even though it comes with these bad things? And
Mhm.
yeah, I still
Mhm.
do. And I like that because now it gives me a reason to take a break. And I think like just because yeah, to your point, just because someone likes cooking doesn't mean they should be a chef because a chef comes with baggage
Right.
compared to just cooking. And I think that like it's okay to let your hobbies and your passions just be that. They don't need to be a job.
Right.
Um
Yeah. Yeah.
like I think there's something important about doing something that isn't linked to money
Yeah.
that like a lot of like influencer culture and just society at large right now in like the business spheres have been trying to monetize and it's
They like
very
this sounds
bad.
like yeah, it feels like corporations almost want us to feel this way such that we'll
Yes.
work harder, you know? And just like
Yeah.
literally on the cooking metaphor, you and I arguably one of the best cooks you and I both know in common, a certain Mr. Will Cordell,
Yes.
who
The legendary Will Cordell.
fantastic cook.
Mhm.
Absolutely amateur. I asked him back in high school and some even in early college, like, do you ever want to like do this? And he, oh no, always no.
Yeah, always no. I have asked him that too. I was
And
always
you know,
like,
like,
"Would you ever want to open a pizza shop?" And he's
yeah,
like, "No."
and like for fuck's sake, like the man makes better pizza. I cannot find a slice of pizza I like better than his. Other
Yeah,
good
he makes
stuff,
the
don't get me
best
wrong, but
pizza.
like, and sure, some of it's nostalgia, but like, I know objectively it's better than a lot of garbage pieces of pizza I've eaten
No,
over
you
the
know,
years, right? Like,
he makes such good crust.
yeah, yeah, damn straight. And
Oh,
I'm just, but
dude.
I like, there's no need for him to be anything else, right? And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And
Man,
so like
fuck. We should do a episode about Will's Pizza.
oh, we should get him on. But
Yeah.
what I mean to say is that like at the end of all of this, talking about jobs is like, I think jobs should really be jobs. You call them what you
Yeah.
want, your career, your professional, whatever. But and they can be passionate. You can care a lot, but like, you know, there isn't ever going to be all that much difference for me, at least, and I think for most people, between that first job you take and the last one you ever have.
Yeah.
It's still a you're doing labor in exchange for money, right? No matter how
Mm-hmm.
much you like it or no matter how much you don't. And because of our society, it's on some level coerced, right? Like
Yeah.
um you can have a good job, you can have the opportunity to, you know, find the one you want, but on average, the most people in this country have to work something.
Yeah.
And so it's okay for that to just be a job, you
Yeah.
know? And in some levels, that might be even healthy.
Exactly. It's okay to just like it's even okay within that job to not want to climb out of that job.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
completely okay. It's completely okay to just work it and then go home. Like
Totally. You
I
don't need,
think
there's no ladders you have to climb. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
it can just like you said, it can just be how you get bread on the table and that's all it has to be because frankly, the fact that we require work in order to exist is kind of not great.
Mm-hmm.
Um but yeah,
Mm.
oh man, I'm glad
We,
it's a Saturday.
yeah, yeah, it is. For us, at least.
Yeah, for us, yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy your
Yeah.
Wednesday,
Enjoy your
listener.
Wednesday. Yes, your hump day with us.
Yep.
Remember, if you're working right now while listening to our show, stand up, take a stretch, get some water, spend an extra 5 minutes at the water cooler because my God, you deserve a break. You are
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
You go.
Yeah, leave 5 minutes early today if you can. Do it, because you deserve it.
Totally.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
everyone.
we are definitely over time.
Oh yeah, I was not expecting this one to be really long, but it was.
No, it
We're on a
happens.
roll.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well then, with that, everyone, you can follow the show at Dane and Derek everywhere. We don't really post that often, but when we do, it's sometimes funny. And you can see the movies I'm making on my website, derekaiello.com.
You can find my writing at danewrites.com. Best link is in the Substack link there. But you can also find my podcast and music I've written and recorded over there. Yeah. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your work if you can. It's okay if you don't. Hope you're doing something awesome at some point today.
Yeah, definitely. Bye bye.
Catch you later.